What if the stories we learned in school were only half the truth? What if behind every polished textbook page, behind every simplified timeline, there lies a darker, more complex, and often forgotten history? This isn't just about dusty old facts, it's about a narrative deliberately shaped, a story written by the victors and carefully erased by the powerful. This is the story of the world they didn't want you to remember. Are you ready to uncover it? Since the dawn of civilization, knowledge hasn't just been power, it has been a weapon. Empires didn't just conquer land and people, they conquered the past itself. They understood that to control the future, you must first control the narrative of what came before. Think about it, from the sprawling Roman Empire to the vast British colonial machine, those in power didn't just build monuments to themselves. They meticulously crafted the story of their greatness. They became the heroes, the civilizers, the bringers of order. Any voices that challenged their rule, any histories that contradicted their divine right to conquer, were systematically silenced, dismissed as barbaric, or simply erased from the record altogether. This wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. History became a tool for justification, a way to make conquest look like destiny. Long before the empires we read about in our standard textbooks rose to prominence, the world was teeming with thriving, innovative societies that are now little more than footnotes, if they're mentioned at all. Consider the Nok of West Africa, masters of terracotta sculpture whose cultural influence spread for centuries. Or the Indus Valley Civilization, which built some of the world's first planned cities with advanced sanitation systems at a time when much of Europe was still in its infancy. Let's not forget the Olmecs of Mesoamerica, the mother culture that laid the groundwork for the Mayans and Aztecs, developing complex writing systems and astronomical calendars. These weren't primitive tribes waiting to be discovered. They were pioneers of science, art, and urban living. Their stories were simply lost, buried under the sands of time and, more often than not, under the weight of subsequent conquests that deemed their histories unimportant. Imagine a library, not just of books, but of humanity's collective wisdom, and then imagine watching it burn. That's not just a metaphor. The burning of the Library of Alexandria represents a catastrophic loss from which we've never fully recovered, but it wasn't a singular event. Throughout history, conquest, censorship, and religious dogma have systematically destroyed vast repositories of knowledge. We lost ancient medical texts that could have held secrets to healing, astronomical charts that mapped the stars with astonishing precision, and blueprints for technologies that were centuries ahead of their time. This wasn't just the loss of artifacts. It was the deliberate destruction of alternative ways of seeing the world. Knowledge that didn't fit the approved narrative of the conquerors was deemed dangerous, heretical, or irrelevant. And so, it was buried, ensuring that history would flow in one carefully controlled direction. When European powers began their global expansion, their ships carried more than just soldiers and merchants, they carried an ideology of superiority. The mission wasn't just to extract resources like gold and spices, it was to remake the world in their own image. This process, which we call colonization, was a profound act of cultural erasure. Indigenous languages, which held entire worldviews and ancestral knowledge within their grammar, were suppressed and replaced. Sacred traditions, practiced for millennia, were outlawed as pagan rituals. Local histories, passed down through oral traditions and intricate art forms, were wiped clean. In their place, the world was taught a single, monolithic version of history, theirs. A version where Europe was the center of the universe and everyone else was on the periphery, waiting to be civilized. This wasn't just theft of land, it was a theft of identity on a global scale. The narrative that Africa was a dark continent waiting for enlightenment is one of the most pervasive myths in history. The reality, while Europe was navigating the so-called Dark Ages, powerful African empires were flourishing. The Mali Empire, led by figures like Mansa Musa, was a global center of wealth, trade, and Islamic scholarship. The Kingdom of Kush built pyramids that rivaled those of Egypt. Great Zimbabwe was an architectural marvel, a city of stone built without mortar that dominated regional trade. Meanwhile, in Asia, innovation was exploding. China gifted the world the four great inventions: printing, which democratized knowledge; gunpowder, which changed warfare forever; the compass, which opened up the seas for exploration; and papermaking. These weren't isolated achievements. They were part of a vibrant, interconnected world that existed long before European dominance. Their stories prove that progress and genius have never belonged to a single culture or continent. So, why don't we learn all of this in school? Because modern education, as much as we value it, is not a neutral space. The curriculum you studied was the result of countless decisions about what is important enough to be remembered and what can be conveniently forgotten. The system itself curates our collective memory. It selects the heroes, defines the turning points, and frames the narrative. Think about the maps on your classroom wall, the chapters in your textbook, the historical figures you were taught to admire. Each one is a choice. This careful editing process often serves to reinforce existing power structures, ensuring that the foundational myths of nations and empires remain intact and that the powerful remain largely unquestionable. We are taught a history that is approved, sanitized, and packaged for easy consumption. The next time you open a history book, or watch a documentary, or even listen to a story about the past, ask yourself a simple question: whose truth are you reading? Whose voice is center, and whose has been silenced? The past isn't truly gone. It hasn't vanished. It's just been hidden, buried under layers of politics, power, and propaganda. The real stories, the forgotten civilizations, and the erased knowledge are still there, waiting to be rediscovered. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we started digging, questioning, and rewriting history for ourselves. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this exploration enlightening, please like, subscribe, and share so we can continue to uncover the stories that shape our world.